afternoon, and thank you so much for coming to this talk on the grass line. I will introduce the speakers. Julio Galli is the head professor of animal production change at the Rosario University. He's a researcher in ICART from Rosario. He is also working in the milk production, and Alex Tomasetti, animal production in the University of Rosario, and a private advisor. The Service Crop Network deals with integrated systems for livestock and agriculture. We want to bring together grazing and forage resources with livestock, cattle raising. We want to show you the results of the network in the past few years. The team processes the information with producers committed to taking measurements so that we can share results. To begin with, the network, our network, the slides, okay. Now, yes. The network is in the chakras system that started with producer needs. We respond to producer needs, meet their demand, and we follow two pillars: cross-sectional support and learning by error in the field. We have tools and technology applied in production lots, learning from it. We have thematic networks, three large areas. The producers, as I said, they do field testing, and thanks to their work, we obtain the information we'll share today. We have companies too providing technology and resources to generate networked information, and experts, Alex and Julio, doing outreach and promoting the information developed from the studies. On the screen, you will see a QR code. Scan it and send your questions. At the end of the talk, we'll answer. Please scan the QR code to share your questions. We'll answer your queries. And now, I give the floor to you guys. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Lina. The Service Crop Grazing Network gets the support, technical support of the university. The general management is with Lina and Aapresid. But we want to highlight the importance of people who are in charge of the different sites in Marco Juarez, Mar del Plata, Huinca, Renanco, Victoria, and Zavala. We have a lot of people. You can see them on the screen from the Rosario University, from INTA, and from Aapresid. They are all in charge of the different sites. I'll make an intro. Alex will share results by our network, and I'll conclude with some answers we already have and with many questions that we have posed too. When the network arises, we carried out a survey amongst producers, amongst our farmers, and in the survey we discussed what happens with What is the criteria for pasture from the livestock sector and from the agricultural sector? Can we grass without affecting service crop yields? From the livestock sector, they were saying, how do I manage them? How do I graze so that you give me an appropriate ecosystem? So it's two points of view that need to come together. Service crops, managing grassing fields and such. So those winter green grasses must help us too. And now what we are thinking of is, and triggers many questions, what is a comprehensive approach thinking of the emerging properties of integrating livestock and agriculture? How we bring that together, thinking of grazing as something that will have an effect. It has to be a positive effect, how to manage grazing, so it will offer an ecosystem to empower agricultural approach of the crops. And that's where we're heading towards a new point of view that doesn't come from one side, but from both sides. Just quickly, we have a simple protocol. It's cumbersome but simple. So we have a protocol for each site to assess. We have 3 treatments with 1 repetition. One is with fallow, with no subsequent. Then we have no grazing with no subsequent one, and one for grazing with a 15 to 20 centimeter remanent. We measure it. We measure the height with this instrument.
Que de alguna manera lo podemos estar apretando algo que no es. De acá vemos el pastoreado.
We have here the fallow and the others. We measure it to see if the service crop over the fallow helps and how much it affects, to what extent does it affect the grass. Because if you don't measure it, you can't know how much or how little it affects the service that we provide. That's why we need to measure. 3 years ago, we started working on this, and let me show you now the results, what they have been. Alex? Good afternoon. As Julio said, this is the 3rd year of Service Crop Assessment Network. As we present the data, I'll show you a first stage of this campaign, and then we'll see how we can analyze this campaign. We can include it within a larger database with the past 2 years' data. By working in a network, we are able to have more and more information, though some sites are distributed, they come from different places, but the institutional work we do with Aapresid and INTA and the university that allows us to have trials in the field carried out every year to measure the effects as time passes. In this campaign, the sites tested were 5. A lot of information will come up. I'll just highlight the most important ones. But this is published in the magazine Advances. I'll share the link with you. It's already published, and the final complete version with all campaign data will be published soon. But there are 5 sites. Service crops have been thought and planned by the producer within their rotation cycle, and they do service with the crop based on their need. So in Marcos Juarez, we have Vicia villosa with tritic kale. Mar del Plata used Villa villosa, ryegrass, and barley, and in that case we have dry rice and oats. They want sequenced forage seeding on the same day, and we pasture with some animals. And when oat has already been grassed, we move on to dry grass, which is up to 15 centimeters of height by then, so we have high growth rates. And once we pasture on that, we go back to oat. So we could have 2 different lots. The days on grassing, based on the needs of each system, are different. From Mar del Plata, grassing is only 38 days compared to Victoria, 136 days. The choice of the successive crop depends on the producer of each plot, and the date of drying service crop to the next seeding is part of the rotation. Marco Juarez, almost at the same time, behind the spray. And in the case of Renanco, there were 70 days to prepare the fallow. One of the variables we measure is the biomass production of service crops. Did Julio say it? For pasture, it doesn't matter what type of pasture method you use. We measure the production of biomass as animals come in and out, and we measure the difference plus the remnant. We estimate total production of the treated pastures, and in the case of non-pastured, we measure it at the end. There aren't any differences between the treated with grazing or not.
Esto como un beneficio más del pastoreo.
But we consider this to be important, working on pastures for the remnant. Seeding in Mar del Plata, the production of biomass was 12,000 kilograms. Useful water at 1 meter depth is measured when we seed the successive crop. No differences found in this campaign, nor in the previous ones. The minor differences here are caused by the chemical fallow. In blue is non-grazing treated, green grazing, and in green you have the fallow. The difference is only 20 millimeters. In and useful water. Another variable we measure is weeds when seeding the successive crop. For this campaign in particular, the two sites measured were Victoria and Zavalla. As expressed, it was because Victoria had open data when processing, so we divide grass and leaves, and we also have the chance to see the different, like raygrass and others. But there was no significant difference. In Zavalla, fallow and oats and raygrass were measured, but no difference was found either. As we continue the assessment, we measured the production of the successor crop. Successor crop, regardless of what the previous crop, the service crop, had been for the trial as a service crop, whatever the producer chose or whatever rotation they followed. In Marco Juarez, Victoria, and Zavalla, they moved on to soybean, and in Huinca, they move on to corn. Mar del Plata is missing because we are going through a very dry winter, so the crops are not ready yet. When receiving and preparing the information, we didn't have data from Mar del Plata, but we hope to have it by the last moment, and there is no significant difference for any of the sites.
Bien, y lo que también medimos que
we also measure, this is what we assess in service crops. We have the animal response as an extra variable. They are pasturing on our service crops. And as we had seen, based on need or the differences from farms, we have a differing animal load, days on grazing. And the output of these three variables gives us the production per hectare. Mar del Plata is the case of the lowest production level, 179 kilograms per hectare. Victoria, almost 600 kilograms per hectare. We are analyzing high potential growth categories, young animals of British breeds. That was data from 2023-24, the closing campaign. And now I want to show you what the network enables, working together year after year, analyzing data. We'll see how each point develops in the Pampas, and we see movements from side to side, as I said earlier. It is always focused on the central region. Is the feedback coming from me? Some remain stable. Importantly, year after year, we get stable data. With the same protocol, we assess under the same criteria, assessing pasture and service crops. And so we see year after year, we have oat with Vicia sativa, oat with Vicia villosa, barley, raygrass, and other combinations with raygrass and oat and others. And successive crops were always soybean and corn, the most common in the regions that we are studying. All right. Lots of colors and numbers here. Let's go part by part. With the data, that's the biomass production in the 3 campaigns of the network. Let's look at this side first. By year, if they are in the same color, it's because they don't show a significant difference. That is, the effect of the year did not impact the 3 years that we have analyzed, because we're assessing all service crop production. As we analyze sites, different sites show differences. Marco Juarez, it's all in the same color. There's no difference in between them, but they differ from the next group. And so we establish differences. Treatment in grazed and not grazed, because that's what we are analyzing. Note there is no significant difference on the interaction. That's why we show data on year, site, and treatment to simplify the interpretation. Likewise for successive crops, soybean and corn. In soybean, we have fallow too, but in soybean, there is no yearly effect. There's effect per site, but that's to be expected. Different regions, different climates. And based on treatment, we can break it down. Non-grazing soybean with no grazing, so it's soybean with no grazing before, or measure soybean with the grazing and soy over fallow, but no significant differences either.
And for the case of corn, we have less data for this year because we have a site missing. We were able to analyze only one site. There is a difference in favor of this campaign that we are analyzing in the site. We have value of Tandil from previous campaigns and Cuenca this year. And in the case of treatments, fallow does not differ from grazed or non-grazed, but there is a difference of grazed over non-grazed in favor of the grazed service cull. So we need to add more data, and probably this net can be replicated, and that the new producers can join us, so we have more data to include in this database. Another thing that we included in the database is the production of meat. And what we want to show here, the interesting fact, is that we have productions in the case of Victoria of 600 kilos per hectare. 2022, we have a lower one in Roca with 149 kilos per hectare. Each one has different loads based on the needs of the establishment, grazing days as well. Let's not forget that when we are working with comprehensive systems, there is a conflict of interest in decision making, because when do I take the animals, what defines me more, if selling the animal or when I have availability to go from there to another place, or the dryness of the service crops. So there is a complexity there. That's why there is so much variation in grazing days, but in general average, the medium increases are of 1 kilo. Load is 1.5 heads per hectare, but we have up to 10 and 80 days grazing in average, but with a lot of variation. And also meat production, we can say for 3 years we have 300 kilos per hectare of meat. with all the years in the network. Another way to show production of integrated system, synergy of the integrated system is through the energy produced that comes up from the energetic content of grains, cereal grains, and meat production obtained in each campaign, and what it represents for integrated systems, agriculture and farming. The production of energy for each side, farming, it's only a little bit compared to the entire production of the comprehensive system. But when we analyze dollars entering the system for that energy produced, it represents, in terms of thinking, that energy produced is lower, but it is better paid than the one coming from the farming activity. So we are being less extractivist with the farming, benefits all represented by the agricultural part. So this is also published in the magazine this year for campaign 21-22. The gray one is in the current campaign 23-24. Last year, the sites where the essays took place, some of them we couldn't plant due to the drought. So we had some cases of production, agricultural production. But we have integrated systems for service crop and how grazing has an impact and how it affects if we, depending on the benefits that we are aiming at with the service crops. So the idea is not to alter the production of biomass so it can compete with weeds, better filtration, etc. So I want to say this again because apart from everything that we have been mentioning so far in terms of farming production, we can also consider that this is quite high for a system. If we look for a historical price of the price of steer, we can have as gross income in dollars of 1.94. That is the value we take as historical price. And we can also speak about Mar del Plata with 179 kilos, can produce $374 against Victoria with $1,100 for a rotation of the integrated system. If we compare this with the cost of the service crops year after year, we were estimating costs in dollars, and in the 21-22 campaign, we were able to have a service crop for gramming because we are considering nitrogenized with urea. So this for the price of urea at the moment of fertilization, and this year was $280. So in terms of $1.94, that is 100 kilos of steer per hectare, the production we should have to pay the service crops. And if we go backwards, we can see that Mar del Plata, which was the site that with less level of production, exceeded it. And now Julio is going to take the floor. What I wanted to show you, taking advantage that in the school we have the possibility to have a site and some essays that are more complex, I'm going to show some results of those essays or tests. With the question, is it possible to graze service crops? This is a work of 10 years of rotation of ryegrass. They were from the Tamba, our animals, lab animals, and soy for grain. So what I'm going to show you are the results for soy as a service crop without grazing. This is pure soy with fallow, and what we want to say is 4 of different levels of intensity of grazing. A low intensity, where we have 20, a medium 15, and low 5 centimeters. So moderate grazing to high grazing. So this is the value of dry material when we have the service crop. And what we could see that in some cases we have a significant production when we grazed in a low or moderate way than non-grazed, and we were able to produce more with dry materials if we introduced dry materials for the service crop versus the soy as a crop. So what happened with the organic heat? So we were able to measure in 10 years, in general terms, this was significantly lower, the fallow, compared to other systems. For service crops, grazing did not affect significantly the content of the organic matter, but we did find that grazing, low-intensity grazing, was different than the high-intensity grazing. So the way we grazed and how we did it was fundamental to ensure and to have less risk in terms of organic matter. So all throughout these 10 years, we hope to have a higher concentration of organic matter, and we haven't seen that. So possibly this was a rotation lot. Perhaps it was in a farm for many years, but the reality is that this work took place during that time. Another work, and here I try to show it with a graph. What happens with penetration, what happens with trampling and roots? So these are hard, heavy soils. These are 3 years old. The rebreed of heifers and steer. This was prepared by Alex, digitally prepared. And we saw the resistance, the penetration in the first 10 centimeters. This is ryegrass oat, grazed and fallow, non-grazed fallow. So this is the resistance in megapascals, up to 2, 0 to 2. There was no restriction in terms of root system. From 2 to 4, there is something, and above 4, then the root would even stop. So in the first centimeters, there are no differences. There are differences with fallow. So treatments for grazing shows a gap with more resistance to prenation, moderate, but it's still there. And then under those 6 centimeters, there is no difference. And here, practically speaking, we go to red, where root development would stop because it's above 4 megapascals. So the idea is that with this compactation before seeding, then we wouldn't have any problem or difference for the service crop that is grazed. So once they get to 50 centimeters, they remove it, of course. But we have now service crops in times where there is no torrential rains. After 3-4 years, do they remove it? No, perhaps after the first or second year, but once the soils have structure and they are able to absorb, and we have a good coverage, then we see that if we do not take care of our loads, we can still keep it. So we don't have trampling problems. The work that we are measuring, we do not find any type of problems with this topic. I do not show the results of the 10-year study, but they were quite similar. And then something else that is shown in the bibliography, this is from 2018, that grazing has, or it changes totally the effect on the soil, not only the structure and the roots, but also it changes the microbiome. We have fungi domain, bacteria domain, and the type of bacteria where there is no activity. To summarize this has an impact of the decomposition of the organic matter, the storage of organic carbon in the soil due to the biomass accumulated from the vegetable part and also the animal. And this is the curve that we would expect with regards to this accumulation of organic carbon in the soil from slight or light to medium grazing. For the same line, these ecosystems is how we can plan grazing based on its intensity, frequency. We are not speaking about rotation grazing or continuous grazing, but to have an optimum of grazing, a moderate grazing, where it's not very high intensity or long duration with a frequency that is too long. So this is a function of the ecosystem that is quite subjective, if you wish. But in terms of intensity, moderate intensity, this work is showing that we are affecting organic matter and which pool we are aiming at. This is the organic matter once we have is particulated with the amount that is one associated to the mineralization, and how the pools change depending on the grazing management. So when we speak about grazing, it's not any grazing. We need to consider the moderate grazing. And something else we were able to see is that this grazing favor animal production, because we have a bigger production of biomass. So the question is, when are we what happens when we don't have grass? And when are we without grass? When we are below the expected number? So that is the idea we need to have into consideration when managing these parameters. The reality leads us to know when we are out of control, but we need to really start to worry when we are really with high intensity grazing. We have many questions. Just to give you a few. The managing of grazing. Can all the service crops be grazed? Well, two things come in mind. There are years that you cannot graze. If I have 5 centimeters and I didn't accumulate biomass, I cannot. If I don't have a coverage with a low production of biomass and I don't want to invest, fertilize it, improve it, or to have a better quality of seed, or to look for a better species that can adapt better. So that's one point. Then, is it necessary that us as a group of service crop evaluation, if we graze the radish, what happens? Do you want to break structures? These are soils with little structure, they are compacted. so that then we can have a service crop, improve it, and then you can graze. Doesn't matter. It's not necessary to have a test to show this situation. If I'm thinking about grazing, would I have a multi-species process? These are questions. These are not topics that we were able to solve. Can we plant different service crops thinking about a foliage service supply chain? Yes, we are doing it, and I think it's going to be important. How we can come up during this time with different species, with different seeding times, etc. What happens with selection methods? What happens with the selection of the animal for a multiple space crop when I generate that? One of the risks when we work with low loads is we have different profiles. I'm not offering an homogeneous grazing that way, so selectivity is having a role. How can I play with that? What is the effect? Those are our questions. For grazing management, and I can continue because I even can think of others. What is the effect of grazing on recycling? I see that very fast there is fecal matter stains or urine stains. So what is the effect? What is the importance of this? How we can improve the efficiency of the use of nutrients thanks to that animal that is recycling, because apart from what they are consuming, they are also recycling and becomes inorganic. What is the efficiency in the soil? We have animals. Is that good or bad for the incorporation in a dry year or a humid year? So I don't know. These are just questions. These are questions that we have. Animals is 1 kilo, 1.2 kilos. Nutritional problems we don't have. What is the efficiency that we can incorporate estiércol? What is the legumes role? Are we interested in legumes to produce meat? Are we interested in legumes for soy? So how can I manage combinations and mixtures to produce animals based on gramines, that I have nitrogen in surplus, and leave legumes to advance? So I start managing the criteria of grazing, and when do I interrupt it? Do you follow me? Am I confusing you?
Porque es una tormenta de ideas juntos.
This is an idea, a storm of ideas. Can we control weeds with grazing? Well, that is a different conversation. But grazing, can I manage it? Useful water, can I use it to regulate the balance in the soils? I was having this conversation with some people. The management criteria are similar to the ones of grazed service crops. But if I have a year that it's dry, then I'm like, why did I plant it? I will try it as soon as I can. But there is a possibility of change. Perhaps it rains, and what do? Then I grazed. So I can reduce the air surface, I can lower the water consumption, and then I can delay my decision for the service crop cultivation. These are recipes. It's options that you make available. It's like a brainstorming. You have management for livestock, winter grazing, and you think,
winter greens without reducing meat production. If we wanted to reduce it, we could, but how many kilograms of meat? You can estimate it to see what the remnant is. As Alex said, the paper is available only partially. We shall publish it all soon. Thank you to the sponsors and all the companies that supported us. Wonderful. Thank you, Julio. We have many questions. Questions mostly emphasize the variety of production scenarios of the sites. If you're interested in being members of the network, please approach and check out the Aapresid paper.
Informarse un poco más en detalle.
It's all publicly available if you're interested in it. We can have simple protocols that allow for a great variety of situations based on species, the type of grazing, the type of livestock you have. The network wants to help with the livestock agricultural integration. That's what empowers the network in the program. We know it is very complex to work with animals, but you're welcome to share and promote the papers. A question: do you have any measurement on fauna? No, we don't, but we are interested in attracting people from agricultural zoology chair so they come and measure. They always say, okay, we are dealing with the chicharrita, with the leaf hopper. But I told them, let's check out the macro fauna and the minor one. We need to motivate them, invite them over. Another question: did you measure infiltration in grazed and ungrazed lands and water buildup, characterization of rains? Last year we showed some data about rains in each site, but this year we started measuring infiltration in some of the sites. Data is not available yet, but in the future we will be able to share also data on compacting. As Julio said, we want to add more people to the team, get other areas involved in this comprehensive effort. We have here a polemic question. Any experience of intoxicated animals with Vicia villosa?
A ver, esa es muy buena pregunta.
That's a great question. I'll be careful to answer. But no, we have used Vicia villosa in the trials of grazing with it. There was never any intoxication. I'm not an expert, but it would seem it is more risky in the advanced stages, but it would be in the vegetative stage. And at our dairy farm, for greens, when we have corn over corn, we use Vicia with gray grass, and no problem with that.
De vaca lechera viene con la suplementación, el consumo.
In dairy cows, we had a supplementation, but no problem. We need to see how it is managed. Are there any other options of grass and legumes to avoid that? And there's plenty of work to be done with other legumes other than Vicia villosa. It depends on what you aim at with the service crop. Another question related to water. Is it applicable with water-limited soils and with salt content? In this kind of environment, what does it mean to apply an integrated system? In those environments, or in any environment that seems to be more labile, you need to be more careful. In these situations, think of what species adapt better to those conditions. And in management, you need to be more careful, as in general terms. Then assess on a case-by-case basis. Last question about what the network tries to share, and in dairy farm and in livestock, cattle raising, there is usually no remnant. The grazing is more intense than recommended. I would say improve your pasture management. Thank you so much for your participation. Thanks.